The house was cheap. That should have been the first red flag. I'd barely finished signing the last document when the realtor, chipper smile, little too sweaty, shoved the keys into my palm and said, "Just don't mind the neighbor, keeps to himself." That was all. No warning, no details. The neighborhood was nice enough, quiet, tree-lined, mid-century homes and worn driveways, old dogs behind fences, wind chimes, that kind of place. My house sat at the end of the street. 2-story, decent yard. Nothing strange. Until I stepped out of the moving truck and caught my first whiff of it. A smell. Not sewage. Not garbage. Something sour, metallic, like rusted meat sealed in plastic and left to warm in the sun. I turned to look at the house next door. It was choked in vines. Not the cute kind. Not ivy or honeysuckle. These were thick, worm-like ropes of growth. Black and purple. Sagging from the gutters and draping over shattered fence posts. The yard was a mess. The so-called garden was a pit of dark, pulpy soil, slick with moisture, covered in tangles of weed and mold. No flowers, no grass, just dirt. Twisted roots and pale, sack-like lumps pushing up from underneath. Like something trying to breathe. I stared for a full minute, not moving. The smell was coming from there. Definitely. One of the mounds shifted. Just slightly, like a slow heartbeat. Then something blinked. I stepped back so fast I nearly tripped on the curb. The curtain in the upstairs window twitched. A pale face watched me through the glass. We locked eyes. The man didn't move. Didn't smile. Didn't wave. He simply stared. Then slowly he pulled the curtain closed again. I should have left right then. I should have backed into my car and driven away from that garden. That house. That entire street. But the keys were in my hand. I just signed a 30-year mortgage. So instead, I forced a laugh. Told myself the guy was just a shut-in. And kept moving boxes. The smell never went away. Every trip inside left it clinging to my clothes. By sunset, I noticed that flies had started gathering on my porch light. Dozens of them, all facing the garden. All buzzing low and slow, like they were waiting for something. And still, not a single flower bloomed in that yard. Just dirt, and shapes, and the feeling deep in my gut that it wasn't just plants growing over there. It was late, around 2:00 a.m. I couldn't sleep, not with that smell still seeping through the windows, heavy and sweet, like syrup gone sour. I was in the kitchen making tea when I heard it, a sound, not loud, not sharp, just thunder for Mr. Speed. Wrong. It started as a shifting, like something wet being dragged across stone. Then a low gurgling creak, as if old wood was straining under pressure. I turned off the kettle and held my breath. The sound came again. From outside. I crept toward the back window and peered through the blinds. The garden next door, the same black-soiled pit he'd been staring at all day, was moving. Not the trees, not the wind, the ground. It pulsed, subtly, rhythmic, like something massive was breathing just beneath the surface. Then the vines twitched, just once. One of the pale growths near the fence bulged upward, like a blister inflating. Something inside it shifted. I swear I saw fingers, before it deflated again with a wet sigh. My heart started pounding in my throat. I shut the blinds, double-locked the door. Didn't sleep. Morning light made everything feel a little less insane. The garden was still disgusting, sure. But maybe I'd overreacted. Sleep deprivation. New house anxiety. I told myself I'd imagined the movement. Maybe some kind of fungal bloom or weird root behavior. So I did what any rational person would do. I went inside, made coffee, and Googled, "Can plants move at night? Black soil smells like meat. Neighbor's garden pulsates. Is that normal?" No answers. I found a gardening forum post that sounded vaguely familiar. A woman describing something growing under her neighbor's shed, bulges in the dirt, bad smell, strange lights at night. The last line of her post simply read, "It touched my dog." There were no replies, no further activity. The account had been deleted. Later that day, I took Muffin out for a walk. She's a little Shih Tzu mix, usually too lazy to bark at anything except the mailman. We walked past the neighbor's house, and that's when she froze. Every hair on her back stood up. She stared at the garden, growling low in her throat. "Come on," I said, tugging her leash, but she didn't move. She kept staring at one spot in the soil, one of those soft, veiny mounds near the fence, and then she lunged, barked wildly, eyes rolling, leash snapping out of my hand. She bolted straight toward the garden, paws kicking up gravel as she charged headfirst into the weeds. "Muffin!" I chased after her, heart racing. She was barking and digging, frantic right at the edge of the fence. By the time I got close enough to grab her collar, she'd unearthed something buried under the topsoil. Something slick and red and not entirely plant-like. It looked like a tongue. No, a hand. A part of a hand. Not decayed. Not skeletal. Fresh. Fleshy. Still attached to something deeper in the soil. I gagged and yanked Muffin away. Her paws were covered in black slime. I didn't look back. That night, there was a knock on my front door. Not the doorbell. A knock. Slow. Heavy. 3 times. I peeked through the peephole. It was him. The neighbor. Mr. Nash. Up close, he looked worse than I'd expected. Skin pale and sagging, like old wax. His eyes were yellowed, glassy. He smelled faintly of the garden. He didn't speak at first, just stared at me through the chain lock. Then, slowly, he leaned forward. "You shouldn't dig," he said, voice rough, barely a whisper. "It's better if you don't know what's down there." I didn't respond. He turned and walked back toward his house, not hurried, not afraid, just tired, like someone who'd been through this before. And suddenly I realized, that thing in the garden, it wasn't just growing, it was being fed. Muffin wouldn't eat the next morning. She didn't bark, didn't beg, just sat by the door, eyes locked on the neighbor's garden through the living room window. I called her name. No response. She was trembling, ears flat, tail tucked, breathing fast and shallow. I reached to pet her. She flinched. Oh, that's when I noticed the slime on her paws had turned her fur a dull gray. It didn't wash off, even after 2 scrubbings. The vet couldn't explain it. "Looks like a chemical burn," he said. "Looks like a chemical burn," he said. "Any exposure to industrial solvents?" I didn't answer. Just paid the bill and left. When we got home, Muffin wouldn't leave my lap. She just kept staring at the window, watching, waiting. For what? I didn't know. I decided to move the couch in front of the window that night. Felt stupid doing it, but the paranoia was crawling up my spine like cold sweat. Then I set up a motion camera, one of those smart ones, infrared, night vision push notifications. I placed it on the windowsill facing the garden and connected it to my phone, just in case. I stayed up watching a documentary, trying to distract myself, but my eyes kept flicking to the phone, to that little live feed. Nothing. Just black soil, twisted weeds, and the faint outline of those pale, fleshy mounds. Then at 3:14 a.m., the notification hit. "Your motion detected. Backyard Kami." Unlocked the screen. For a moment, all I saw was static. Then the image resolved. Grainy, but unmistakable. The garden was shifting. The earth swelled. Slowly, deliberately, like something enormous was pushing up from deep beneath. A crack opened. The soil peeled apart, and from it, something began to rise, not fast, not with purpose, just emerging. It had no real shape, not at first. Just a slick, glistening column of dark matter, wet and trembling like a newborn calf. It swayed slightly as it climbed upward, impossibly tall, then bent toward the camera. The feed cut out. The app froze. And suddenly, my house was too quiet. I ran to the window. Nothing there. No lights on in the neighbor's house. No movement in the garden. I unlocked the door, against all reason, and stepped outside. The air was thick, warmer than it should have been. The smell hit harder than ever, like copper and hot decay. I crept along the edge of my yard, trying to keep my breathing quiet. Then I saw it, just past the fence, half buried in the mud. Was the thing from the camera. It looked human, or like it had tried to be. Arms bent the wrong way. No face, just smooth skin where features should be. The chest rose and fell like it was breathing. It didn't react to me. It just shivered, pulsed, and then, horrifyingly, it smiled, right where a mouth shouldn't have been. The flesh peeled open in a slow, vertical slit. Rows of tiny white teeth glistened inside. I stumbled backward, tripped over a garden hose. When I looked up again, it was gone. The next day I knocked on the neighbor's door. I didn't know what I was going to say. "Hi, I think your plants are cursed. Excuse me, is your backyard a gateway to hell?" He opened the door halfway before I could knock again. Same as before, pale skin, yellowed eyes. But this time, he looked afraid. He looked afraid. He saw it. He whispered. It wasn't a question. He glanced past me toward the garden. "It knows you now." "What is it?" I asked. "What the hell is that thing?" He closed his eyes, took a long breath. "It doesn't have a name," he said. "It grew here, before the houses, before people. I didn't plant it. I just kept it calm." I felt my stomach twist. Calm? I felt my stomach twist. It needs attention, recognition. It's part of us now, if no one feeds it. He stopped, shook his head. "It gets lonely, and when it's lonely, it grows hungry." Then he stepped back, slammed the door. I stood there for a long time, staring at the house. Behind me, the wind shifted. The smell came stronger than ever. Something had bloomed. It started in my backyard, right by the fence line. I saw it around dawn. A patch of my own grass had blackened overnight, curling into ash-colored tendrils. The soil beneath was slick and dark, like wet clay, and something had broken through. A stalk, not a root, not a plant. A stalk, tall and veined, almost fungal. At the top was a bulb, pink, fleshy, pulsing slowly, as if it were breathing. It turned toward the sun, like it knew it was being watched. I grabbed a shovel and tried to dig it out, but as soon as the blade struck the soil, a high-pitched keening noise rose from beneath the dirt, like metal screaming underwater. I dropped the shovel and backed away. The noise faded. The stalk stayed, still pulsing. Still breathing. By noon, 2 more had grown. That night I noticed a rash on my arms, gray, mottled. It spread in thin, branching lines. When I scratched it, I swore I could feel something moving beneath the skin. Muffin barked. The first sound she'd made in a day. She was scratching at the door, whining, tail between her legs. I let her out, hoping she'd just go pee and come back in. She ran straight for the garden, right for the fence. I shouted, sprinted after her, but by the time I got there she was already in the weeds, barking at the base of one of the stalks. The bulb opened, no petals, no pollen, just a thick, glistening membrane that peeled back like lips parting. Inside was an eye, not a plant eye, a human one, bloodshot, twitching, focused. It locked on Muffin. I didn't even have time to scream. The stalk bent, impossibly fast, and the bulb slammed shut around her like a Venus flytrap. Gone. No sound. Just wet dirt where she'd stood. I snapped, ran inside, grabbed the same shovel, came back swinging. I hacked at the stalks, screaming, sobbing, hitting them until my arms went numb, but they didn't break. They bled. Thick, dark fluid oozed out where I'd struck, smelling of iron and rot. One of them twitched and made a noise, like a moan muffled in mud. That's when the ground gave out beneath me. The soil crumbled and I fell, maybe 10 feet straight down, into a hollow space under the garden. A pit. It was warm. Breathing. The walls were soft, not rock, not clay. Flesh. I was inside it. The roots above weren't roots at all. They were veins. And around me were shapes. Half-formed things curled in sacks of clear membrane, twitching. Limbs, faces, teeth, eyes. Some were human, some weren't. I scrambled out, screaming, covered in the thing's mucus, and ran. Didn't stop running until I hit the sidewalk. Neighbors saw me. They just stared from behind their curtains, like they already knew. I stayed up the rest of the night, shaking, watching the feed. More stalks had grown, a whole row now. They swayed in sync, like dancers in some grotesque windless ballet. At 2:22 a.m., the camera glitched again. I looked outside. People were walking into the garden, half-dressed, pale, slack-jawed. From houses up and down the block, they moved like sleepwalkers. No hesitation, no fear. One by one, they stepped into the pit. The stalks bent low. The bulbs opened. Each person stood still as the pods closed around them. No screams, no struggle. Offering. I recognized a few. The mailman, my realtor, the guy with the flagpole 3 houses down, and then a sound at my door. A slow knock, 3 times, same as before, but this time I didn't check the peephole, because I could hear it breathing. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat in the dark, eyes on the front door, holding the biggest kitchen knife I owned. The knock never came again, but the breathing continued, low, slow, wet, as if the entire house was now sharing lungs with the thing in the earth. Every time I touched the walls, they felt warm. They felt warm, like blood had started flowing through the insulation. At sunrise, I heard a thump on the roof, then another, like something heavy dragging itself across the shingles. I stepped outside and looked up. Veins. Thick, root-like cords had begun to grow across my rooftop, the same grey-pink hue as the stalks. Pulsing, anchoring. It wasn't just under the soil anymore. It was above me, around me, inside. I drove. Didn't pack, didn't grab a wallet, just keys and whatever sanity I had left. But every street I turned down, the same things stared back. More stalks, growing through porches, wrapping around mailboxes, cracking sidewalks, people outside watering them, smiling. One woman stood barefoot in her yard, her arms extended like she was in a trance, while one of the stalks wrapped gently around her neck like a scarf. I slammed the gas pedal, hit the end of the block. A road closed sign sat across the intersection, but there was no road work, just more of that black soil. and a group of neighbors in reflective vests, smiling, waving, waiting. I turned back. Only place left to go was the neighbor's house. I pounded on Mr. Nash's door. "Open up," he did, this time without hesitation. Inside, the air was even worse, thick with rot and something sweet underneath. The walls were stained dark. Something moved inside the wallpaper. "You let it spread," I spat. He just looked at me exhausted. "It was already spreading. I just slowed it down." "How long?" I asked. "How long has this been going on?" He sat down, groaning like his bones were bending wrong. "My father fed it, and his father before him. It needs connection, warmth, a sense of community." "You mean sacrifice?" "Yaoi." "What do you think Hoafis were really for?" I wanted to laugh. Scream. Run. But he leaned in then, his voice shaking. "If you burn your yard now, maybe you can stall it, but not stop it. It's in you already." And he looked at my arms. The gray rash was crawling up my neck. That night the moon rose red, not metaphorically, blood-colored, low, too big. I doused my backyard with gasoline. Every inch. Took a match, dropped it, and lit hell on fire. The stalks writhed, twisting in the flames. I heard screams, not just air escaping, but voices, dozens, maybe hundreds. One of them sounded like Muffin. And deeper, beneath the burning soil, I heard words, not in English, not in anything human, but I understood them. We were never supposed to live here. The houses were a lie. We were just meat in waiting, flesh pots for something older. The fire didn't stop it. Not really. It just made it angry. And the next morning, every house on my street had a stalk in the yard. Every window had a face staring out. And I was the only one left who remembered what it was like before the garden bloomed. I walked the neighborhood at dawn. No one hid anymore. They were out in the open, standing still in their yards, facing the garden, silent, smiling. Every lawn was the same, pulsing black soil, stalks swaying, gray-veined vines running up porch pillars like veins pumped from a shared heart. The children were the worst. They moved differently now, heads tilted, limbs jerking like marionettes, muscles too loose in their joints. One little girl across the street waved at me. Her hand had too many fingers. I didn't wave back. I was the only one left still trying to pretend. But my rash had spread past my jaw. My tongue felt thick. My eyes itched, not from allergies but from the pressure building behind them. I saw my reflection in a car window. The veins were visible under my skin, and they were moving. I couldn't stay. I drove again, desperate, out of the cul-de-sac, over the curb, through barricades. The wheels shredded on a hidden spike strip. But I didn't stop until I rolled into the next county. I stumbled into a gas station, ranting about the garden, the teeth, the pulsing earth. The cashier just stared. Behind him, the security TV screen showed multiple camera angles. One of them looked familiar. My street, my house. The feed was clear. Not a glitch, not motion blur. Crystal sharp. The stalks were longer now, taller than power poles. And in the center of the garden was a hole, wide, round, pulsing like a throat. I watched a man crawl into it. He was smiling. The cashier said, "We monitor all growth zones." I backed away. "Growth zones?" He nodded. "It's a rollout, beta phase, like it was a product, not a horror." That night, I woke to the sound of soil shifting inside my motel room. I ripped back the carpet and found it. a single black sprout no taller than my finger, pushing up through the plywood subfloor. It twitched when I touched it, and I heard something in my head. Not a voice exactly, but meaning, intent. Why do you run? You are of us. You belong. He dug it out with a pocket knife and flushed it, but the mark it left behind was shaped like an eye. When I blinked, it blinked back. I screamed until the motel manager pounded on the door. He took one look at my face and locked the door from the outside. I heard him call someone. I heard the words, containment breach. There was no choice left. I had to go back, not to fight, not to burn, but to understand. The houses were half sunken now. The pavement had split. Trees were gone, replaced by towers of pulsing tissue wrapped around light poles. My front door was open. Inside, the walls were breathing. The floors were soft. The house smelled like a wound, and beneath it all I heard whispers. In the wood, in the vents, in the water, running through the pipes. It wasn't just alive. It was aware. I collapsed in the hallway, sweating, trembling. The rash on my body cracked and peeled back, revealing something pale and wet underneath. Not bone, not muscle. Something new. And then I understood. It wasn't taking over. It was replacing. Piece by piece. Organ by organ. This wasn't infection. This was evolution. I couldn't feel pain anymore. My skin didn't itch. It flexed. Shifted. My reflection was a stranger. Gray-veined neck, eyes too wide, pupils shaped like slits. When I opened my mouth to scream, something clicked in the back of my throat, like mandibles adjusting. But I wasn't afraid, not really. The fear had been replaced by something else. Hunger, not for food. For closeness. For root. For soil. I walked barefoot into my backyard. The fire-blackened patch had healed, already blooming with new stalks, taller, smoother. Their bulbs opened as I approached. Not in threat, in recognition. They bent toward me like flowers seeking the sun. I stepped forward, feeling the soil sink slightly beneath me, and the ground beneath my feet welcomed me home. The pit was wider now, a perfect spiral descending below the surface, not carved, but grown. The walls shimmered like muscle tissue stretched over light, pulsing, breathing. I descended. The closer I got to the bottom, the more it all made sense. This wasn't alien. It wasn't unnatural. It was the original. What the forests forgot. What the oceans rejected. What the first cells buried in shame. Now, it had returned, not through violence, through invitation. I heard them, all of them, every neighbor, every pet, every twisted shape in the translucent sacks lining the walls. They spoke with one voice. Let go of your name. You do not need to be alone. You were never yours. I wept, not in fear, in relief, and still, deep inside me, something resisted. The part that remembered Muffin, the part that still wanted to run. I reached the base, and there she was, Muffin, whole, alive, standing on 4 legs in front of the pulsing core. She wagged her tail, but it wasn't a tail anymore. It was a tendril. Her eyes were glassy, wide, reflecting the same hunger I felt. She walked toward me. I knelt, reached out, and she melted into me. Not blood, not death, just absorption. My bones cracked. I felt them realign, muscles stretched into new architecture. My joints formed where none belonged. My spine pulsed. And my mouth opened the wrong way. But it wasn't pain. It was becoming. I emerged from the pit as the sun set. But the sun wasn't yellow anymore. It was red, low, watching. I walked down the middle of the street. The neighborhood bowed. Eyes peered out, wide and glowing. The others stepped forward. Those who had already become. Their bodies no longer held human symmetry. Their fingers split. Mouths bloomed across chests. One by one they joined me. Not as followers. As roots from the same stem. We moved as one. We turned toward the town beyond. Toward the highways. Toward the cities. The garden was not a place. It was a process. And now, it was time to plant. We reached the edge of the neighborhood by morning. It wasn't hard. We didn't walk. We moved through things. Around, under. Our bodies weren't bound by streets or sidewalks anymore. We passed through fences like mist, across highways without being seen. No one screamed. No one ran. They didn't even look at us. They just felt the urge to go home, to water their lawn, to dig their fingers into the dirt, to wait. The black soil followed us, spreading behind our steps, cracking concrete, wilting trees. A man stared down at the sidewalk beneath him as it pulsed. He didn't move when a small stalk pushed up between his shoes. He just smiled and bent down to touch it. It unzipped his palm. He didn't scream. He said, "It's beautiful." And by the time we left the suburb behind, 6 more blooms had taken root. I don't remember my name anymore, but I remember the hunger. I remember the resistance, the way my mind once screamed against the voice in the dirt. Now I sing with it. The garden speaks through me, not in words, not even in thought. In pulse, in pattern. Across the country, others begin to dig, to dream. In cities, in forests, even deep in basements where something wet grows behind drywall, they feel it. Come home. The air smells sweeter now, more fertile. We are not here to destroy. We are here to seed. You will not notice the first change, just a twitch in the roots of your gums, a rash at your hairline. Then the dreams begin, of soil, of stalks, of welcoming mouths opening in the earth. And when you wake, you'll find black soil under your nails. You won't remember how it got there, but you'll smile. You'll step outside, and you'll understand the garden grows. And it has chosen you.